It's Talk of the Nation. I'm Juan Williams. Yesterday, an envoy from Afghanistan's rulers, the Taliban, spoke to a foreign policy group in Washington and defended the regime's decision to bomb into rubble two 1,500-year-old statues of Buddha that were carved in a mountainside. But as he spoke, he was jeered and called a criminal by a group of Afghanis who live in the United States. The demonstrators formed a picket line around the site of the speech. They carried signs protesting the Taliban's prohibition on education for women and the refusal to allow women to even walk outside their homes unless they're accompanied by a male relative. In his speech, Rahmatullah Hashemi, a member of Taliban's foreign ministry, defended his country's rulers. He blamed the Western media for distorting the reality of what is happening inside Afghanistan. He said, quote, "I don't blame these people who are living here, because if the only source of my information about the Taliban was the Western media, I would hate them too." Hashemi said that the Taliban has improved the human rights situation in Afghanistan, not made it worse. He said the Taliban has reunified the country, which has been torn by war for more than 2 decades. Hashemi met with State Department officials Monday, and he delivered a letter for President Bush in which the Taliban asked for improved relations between the two countries. But a State Department spokesman said the letter did not address key U.S. concerns. Those include allowing accused terrorist Osama bin Laden, who is being harbored in Afghanistan, to stand trial on charges of bombing U.S. embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. Today on Talk of the Nation, a conversation with the roving envoy of the Taliban government of Afghanistan, Saeed Hashemi. Joining us for the conversation is NPR's foreign editor, Lauren Jenkins. And you. Join the conversation. Our number is 800-989-8255. That's 800-989-TALK. Our email address is totn@npr.org. Mr. Hashemi, welcome to Talk of the Nation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Before we begin, let me note to the listeners that you're only 24 years old.
That's right.
And the oldest Taliban leader, Mullah Omar, is only 40.
That's okay.
So is the youth of Afghanistan's leadership an issue, a problem in trying to negotiate with other countries like the United States?
No, I don't think so. The problems that you mentioned just a moment ago were not our creations. For example, you mentioned the existence of terrorism, the drugs, human rights, fragmentation, and the existence of arms and law and order. These things were the creation of war, and that war was not our creation. That war was ignited by the Russians and fought by the Americans. So we were played with. These two powers played their game there and left all the destruction, the weapons, landmines for us. We have said that after the Soviets left, it's okay. We are very thankful to the United States that they provide us weapons in defending our country. But after the Soviets left, the United States too left Afghanistan with all of this destruction, arms, and lawlessness that existed. So those 7 independent parties who went to Afghanistan later on destroyed the country for the sake of power. 75,000 people were only killed in the capital, Kabul. So seeing this complete chaos, a group of students called the Taliban first started in a village in Kandahar, in the southern city of Afghanistan. It happened when a warlord had abducted 2 minor girls, and they were wrapped in that base. The parents of those 2 girls came to a school and asked the teacher to help. And the teacher, along with his 53 students, went to help, and they first attacked the base of that commander. They released those 2 girls and hanged that commander later on. So we started from there, and this heroic story of the students were told everywhere, even by the BBC. So I was one of those who heard the story from the BBC in the refugee camps in Pakistan, and I went to join this students' movement, and I'm still there. We don't say we are perfect, but look what we have done in the country. Afghanistan was fragmented into many zones before we were there. You could not travel with 1 visa to Afghanistan. Even you could even not be safe there. Everybody had gun and could shoot you anywhere. We first reunified a fragmented country, which nobody could do. And the second thing which the United Nations failed to do was to disarm people. The United Nations passed an appeal in 1992 and asked for $3 billion to repurchase the arms from the people. And because of its impracticability, that program never materialized.
Well, speaking of the United Nations, just this week the United Nations has expressed concern over the fact that their food aid program has been disrupted and they're not going to stop supplying some of this food aid because the Taliban, the regime ruling Afghanistan, is not allowing women to work for the United Nations and go into individual households in Kabul and look to see if, in fact, the food is getting to people who are hungry. Why is the Taliban refusing to allow women to work with international charitable aid groups?
We have never said that. We have said that we cannot accept a state within a state. We welcome anybody assisting us, but they should not dictate their rules. We appreciate any kind of assistance, but that assistance should not be politicized. And the problem of what you're mentioning was with WFP, and that problem has been resolved now. We have said that they can help, but they have to obey the rules.
So how is it resolved?
It was resolved later on when the United Nations fired their 2 staffs and sent new staffs. It happens when the United Nations is picking somebody from the streets of New York and then bring him there, who knows nothing about the culture, who knows nothing about the religion, nothing about the traditions, and nothing about the people. And they just jump there and poke around. So they do things from their own perspective, which is wrong. So we asked them to send professional people. And when they did it, it's okay now.
Lauren Jenkins?
Well, isn't one of the problems with all the relief agencies has been this problem of they can't get enough local staff because, again, the prohibition on women working with them. Traditionally, the women of Afghanistan played a very vital role in all the relief organizations, and now they go there and they find that they're so limited in what they can do and who they can reach that a lot of them have found it have pulled out or found it very difficult to continue providing what is obviously needed aid to Afghanistan.
Well, these organizations are still working there, and the women are working with them according to the rules of the government. And when we say that the United Nations or any organization, when they're working with women, when we say that there should be segregated workplaces, it doesn't mean that we don't want them to work there. There were organizations from irresponsible places that came there and recruited women and then took them outside for political asylum and deceived them and took them to Singapore and Thailand and sold them. So we don't have a very good experience with these people.
This is not the United Nations.
This is not the United Nations, of course. This is some NGOs that have done that.
Some charitable groups have taken Afghani women and taken them out of the country and sold them into slavery?
Yeah. There were so many kinds of organizations that they would come there and do some things, and we have to be very cautious while dealing with them. I don't blame the United Nations. The United Nations is doing their job, but that's not enough. We have said that they have to come more. Their bases are not even in Afghanistan. They are living in Pakistan. We have said, please move your offices into Afghanistan.
All right. Now, we have to talk a little bit about the statues. As I understand it, in an interview with the New York Times this week, you said you have no remorse over the destruction of these 2 amazing statues of Buddha that were carved in a mountainside and destroyed by missiles and bombs in the last few days. How is it that you have no feelings over the destruction of such a historical and religious artifact?
Well, I've said when I was here, I heard this, if we were to destroy these statues, why didn't we destroy it 3 years ago? And we said that we will preserve them. It happened when a group of foreigners came there from the Western world. They said that they are going to repair their statues. And next door, children were dying of malnutrition. And that malnutrition was caused by the sanctions, the economic sanctions. So the Council of Scholars had asked them to please help the children instead of helping the statues. We don't need the statues. Our priority is our children. 700 children died a month ago of malnutrition. So they said, if you're going to help us, please help us with the children. They said, no, this is only for the statues. And the people were pissed off. They said, if you don't care about our children, who are you caring about our past? If you are destroying our future with economic sanctions, then you have no right to protect our heritage.
But on the other hand, Lauren, you can help me here if I'm wrong, but I believe the United States gives $113 million annually in aid to Afghanistan. The world has been helping. So why is it that you would say somehow it's a case of no help coming and then help for the statues? In fact, there was help on both fronts.
Well, there is assistance coming to Afghanistan, and that assistance has an example like this. If I come and snatch $100 from you and then come tomorrow and give you $1 as a charity and ask you to thank me. The sanctions that are imposed by the United Nations cost us millions of dollars each month, and then they give us some $1,000 as charity. We say if they really want to help us, they have to lift the sanctions.
Well, you know, this is an interesting discussion, but, you know, one of the reasons the sanctions are there has to do not with the suffering of the Afghan people, but with the fact that your government continues to harbor Osama bin Laden and a lot of other groups that are sworn enemies of the United States and a lot of other places in the Western world. The issue is terrorism and your continued support of terrorism, which is one reason you're not getting a lot of support from the United States. And you won't get any support, I would imagine, until there's something is done for you to curb the support of international terrorism.
There are problems and the people are suffering because of the sanctions. I agree it is because of Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden existed in Afghanistan 17 years before we existed. He was there, and such people were instigated to go and fight the Soviets by the government of America and by the CIA. And they were called the heroes of independence by the CIA and the government of America. And we then don't need them anymore. They have transformed them into terrorists, exactly like Mr. Yasser Arafat was transformed from a terrorist to a hero when they need him now. So we don't know as to what is the definition of terrorism. If they had problems with Osama bin Laden, why didn't they tell us before striking Afghanistan? We would resolve this problem very easily.
Well, excuse me, they have told you. They've been passing on information about him for a long time. Osama bin Laden was chased out of Sudan and went to live in Afghanistan because the United States was approaching the Sudanese government about it, and they've been following him. They've certainly have repeatedly brought up the issue with your government. The idea that he was once a hero and today is a terrorist doesn't hold water. I mean, he has been proven, or at least not yet in court, but certainly all the investigations seem to point that he was responsible for bombing 2 American embassies and killing hundreds of people.
Well, I have said Bill Richardson was in Kabul in 1997. He never talked about this man. If they needed this man, why didn't they tell us then? All of a sudden, in 98, until 1998, we were called the puppets of America. In 98, we were all sitting at home. 75 cruise missiles fired at Afghanistan. We don't know who did it. And finally, we come out that the United States said that we are trying to kill a man whose name is Osama bin Laden and we want him. So we told the U.S. ambassador in Islamabad that if you needed this man, why didn't you tell us? And why did you try to kill a man without even giving him a fair trial? And even if somebody is a criminal, is the police going to blow his house or take him to a court? We don't think he was a criminal. And we have said, despite we were attacked, despite 19 innocent people were killed, and all these things, we didn't declare war. We were very polite. We had a lot of problems. We went to the U.S. Embassy, and we gave 3 proposals for resolving this problem. The first one was that if the United States can provide us any kind of evidence that this man was involved in terrorist acts in Kenya and Tanzania, we would punish this man, and in our Constitution, anybody found guilty of killing civilians will face capital punishment. And that was rejected. We were told that our judicial system was not acceptable to the United States, and all we should do is that he should be given to New York. Okay, after that, we gave a second proposal. We asked that if the United States thinks that he is a threat to the United States security, we will accept an international monitoring group to watch his activities for the rest of his life, so that he is no telephone, meets nobody, and he is not active even politically against anybody. That was also rejected.
Well, hang on for just a moment. I want you to finish that thought. We have to take a break. We're talking about the hardships in Afghanistan and why the Taliban recently destroyed 2 ancient Buddhas. I'm Juan Williams. It's Talk of the Nation from NPR News. It's Talk of the Nation. I'm Juan Williams. We're talking with the roving envoy of Afghanistan's Taliban. Afghanistan is collapsing under the weight of war and economic hardships. Can the militant Islamic Taliban pull its country back from the brink? Our guests are Saeed Rahmatullah Hashemi, roving envoy of the Taliban government of Afghanistan, and Lauren Jenkins, NPR's foreign editor. You're invited to join the discussion also. Give us a call, 800-989-TALK. Our email address is totn@npr.org. Mr. Hashemi, you were responding to Lauren Jenkins' question about the presence of Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. You said, in your opinion, he is not a criminal.
Yes, he said that he is not a criminal, and we said if anybody thinks he is a criminal, they have to give us proof. And unless we have proof, we can't say he is a
But Lauren said the United States government has given you proof.
They have given us nothing except a CNN clip and an indictment, which is not a proof.
Well, the issue is, you're quite right that one needs to bring Osama bin Laden to trial to find out just what is the case and to what extent he has been involved in these bombings and other acts of international terrorism. There is a trial going on in New York right now of some of his alleged aides that is bringing out a lot of evidence. So the indictment, I think, that you refer to is probably the indictment that came out of that trial, which is our legal system's the way we start, with an indictment which lays out the cases and the charges against any individual. The question is how do we bring him to justice? I think the United States would like you to send him to a Western court, send him to the United States, and let him stand trial.
So, Mr. Hashemi, what Lauren describes is you bring someone to trial to find out if they're guilty. It's not the case that you prove they're guilty before you have a trial. Does that make sense to you?
That makes no sense to me, because justice is not only in the United States. Justice is everywhere in the... And you said about the trial of two guys in New York. We have said that, how do we know that you will not kill a man before giving him a trial? How can you justify trying to kill a man without even giving him a fair trial? The United States tried to kill him. And these two guys who are being tried in New York, one of them is Ali Muhammad and the second is Mr. Fadl. Mr. Fadl says, according to the grand jury itself, that he has stolen 110,000 rupees dollars from Osama bin Laden. And according to the grand jury itself, he has lied in one of his statements. Then how can you believe a thief and a liar? And the second man, who is Ali Muhammad, he said he is plea bargaining with his prosecutors. And plea bargaining means nothing for us, because justice is black and white. It has nothing to do with deal or bargaining or compromise.
Now, let me shift grounds a little bit and talk about something that American women find so troubling, which is the way that the Taliban treats Afghani women. What is the situation? We've been told that Afghanistani women are not allowed to go to school, not allowed to work, even if they are trained as doctors, lawyers, not allowed even, it seems, to go outside of their own homes unless they're escorted by a male relative. What is the truth?
This is all wrong. We have never said that women cannot go out. Actually, as much as we have done for women, nobody else has done in the history of Afghanistan. Women were sold before our government. We have given the right of self-determination to women. Women can have business and had never this right. In some pockets of the country, including the capital Kabul, they might have had some symbolic rights, but in the rural areas, their rights were violated from the beginning. And what we have done is to give them their most fundamental rights. And we have never said that a woman can't be educated, and we have never said that a woman should not work. We have said that women can work and be educated. And still, schools are open for women, but when we say that we are against co-education, it doesn't mean that we are against education for women. When we say that women should work segregatedly, it doesn't mean that we are against their work. And we are doing it now. Women are working in the Ministry of Health, women are working in the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Social Affairs. It's right, they don't work in the Ministry of Defense, or they are not fighter pilots. And we also don't like them to be used as objects of decorations for advertisements as it's here. So we do have our own traditions and cultures, and it existed for centuries in Afghanistan. You cannot set benchmark for us to achieve.
Well, now, do you think, Lauren, that that's the way American women see it, or is that the way your reporters for NPR are telling you conditions exist in Afghanistan for women?
Well, they've changed, obviously. When the Taliban came in, you did close all the schools for women. You did send women home from their jobs. Women were not allowed to walk the streets unless they were escorted by a male family member. They were isolated. Are you telling us that now after that period of isolation of women, forcing them all to wear the burqa, never to be able to be seen, that you're changing, that you have reopened the schools, you are letting them go out?
Have you ever heard from us saying that we will not allow women to work or education? You will never find any statement by us saying that. Right. When we captured the capital, Kabul, in 1996, we asked women to stay at home and not to go to work. And if they go out, they have to be accompanied by a male. That time, the whole city was full of arms, irresponsible gangs. And our priority was to disarm people. And we disarmed people. After that, women are shopping, women are working, women are going to education. We don't have much resources to expand these programs, and we have asked the world and the feminist majority itself that if they really care about the women in Afghanistan, they shouldn't scream from thousands of miles away. If they really want to help them, they have to come there and help them with some kind of assistance. That will make a difference for them. If they open one school for women, that will make a difference. But screaming from here will make no difference.
Now, I noted that recently a group of journalists, 6 journalists, were expelled from Afghanistan for trying to photograph the Kabul Museum. And of course, that is the site of several statues, several Buddhist statues, artifacts that the Taliban says that it may destroy or that have already been destroyed. What is the case? What are you doing with these artifacts in the museum?
First, we have not expelled 6 journalists. Only one journalist from BBC was politely asked to go out of the country, and I will give you the reason for that. We have never said that we will destroy all the statues in Afghanistan. And those statues which are still worshipped are preserved for the Hindu community there, and they are still worshipping that. I said this problem of these 2 statues was completely different from the rest. And the woman from BBC who was there, she was very irresponsible in reporting. Actually, she had said that there are 2 groups within the Taliban, and in the near future they may fight among themselves and do certain things which she shouldn't say, because she is not there to concoct stories for us. She is there to report stories.
And so, wait, that's the journalist who was expelled?
Yeah.
And so when you said kindly asked to leave, what do you mean?
She was asked to leave the country because she was not responsible for her reporting. She said that there are 2 groups and they may fight. This man may fight with this man and the Taliban may split. All these things are something that she was instigating people to do.
Well, do you understand the concept of censorship?
I don't. Within your constitution, didn't the media distort the results of the elections this year? And within your Supreme Court now it's going on that nobody can talk before the results of something. Here we heard that there were so many stories. CNN said the Republicans won. Another TV said those won, and distorted everything. And I know now that there is a law being processed that nobody can say something in advance. And we too have this problem. We do not want people to instigate things in our country. If there is anything to happen, then anybody has the right to say that.
Lauren,
excuse me, I don't understand what law you're talking about. I certainly don't know of any law that means you can't report anything. We have a First Amendment in this country which allows us to report on anything and everything. And that is the approach of our journalism.
Go right ahead.
Report on anything that has happened, but you shouldn't instigate or predict things.
Well,
and that's in public.
I'm sorry. You've misread our laws. We can predict things. We can analyze. We can discuss disputes among political parties, among factions. We do that all the time. That's part of what we do. And some of it is looking forward and what are the issues that we'll be facing in the future. There's no law against that.
And here's the biggest thing. We have the right to make mistakes.
Well, you do have the right to make mistakes. But what I try to say is that I read this article in New York Times that something is going on that when the elections is going on, nobody has the right to say this man won or that man until the results are cleared. So I knew this. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I read it in the New York Times while I was here. In our country, we have problems and we don't want further problems. So anybody who is responsible, we allow everybody to report the facts, whatever the facts, whether or not we like it. But we don't allow people to instigate insurgencies in our country.
All right, let me take a call. Let me go to Ramsey, who's in Rochester, New York. Ramsey, welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Hello, hi. Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things. I come from Lebanon, where we have 60% Muslims, and I'm not a Muslim, but I've done a lot of readings, and you know, if Mr. Hashemi knows that during the you know, the Islamic during the Prophet's days, women had a lot of rights, and there was a lot of women that made a lot. You know, they were in the political arena, and unfortunately, what's happening in Afghanistan is, you know, it's just going back to the pre-Islamic era, where women are just as being used as commodities.
Well, hang on, Ramsey, because what we've heard from Mr. Hashemi is that's not right. Is that right?
Yeah, that's not right. That is the media exaggeration, I would say.
Well, you know, I really don't think that not allowing women to go to school and to participate in the social and political life is what the Islamic religion preaches for. And also, on the other hand, Mr. Lorne is talking about the women's rights and this and that. And I would like him to just remember that the United States is a big supporter of Saudi Arabia, and women in Saudi Arabia are being treated exactly the same as in Afghanistan. So what does he think about that?
Thanks for your call, Ramsey. Lauren?
Well, I think there are a lot of places in the world where women aren't treated well, and so certainly Saudi Arabia is one of them. And that doesn't, from our culture and our value system, we find that unacceptable too. Saudi Arabia isn't harboring terrorists that are attacking the United States, however, and I think that's, again, we come back to what our differences are with Afghanistan, or that, more than the women's issue.
All right, let's take another call. Let's go to Nancy, who's in Woodbridge, Virginia. Nancy, you're on Talk of the Nation. Welcome.
Hi, I'd like to say salam alaikum to Mr. Hashemi. I'm an American Muslim woman who's been, you know, viewing the situation with the Taliban through the lens of the Western media, and I really just wanted to say that I appreciate hearing the view of someone who's from the country. I think the situation with regards to the women is not ideal, but then it's also exaggerated because the Westerners simply cannot look from the point of view of a Muslim. It's alien to them. They see the women as downtrodden. I mean, I see Western women as downtrodden because they're forced to reveal themselves and dress skimpily and go out and compete with men, and I'd just like to hear him comment on that.
Well, before he does, let me ask you a question. I don't think it's true that a Western woman is forced to dress in any fashion.
Well, I mean, look at what we have as our models, which are women who are skinny and tall and naked, and women are forced to try and live up to that. I mean, if that weren't true, then places like Weight Watchers and Jenna Craig wouldn't be so popular, because we're trying to live up to this awful ideal.
But that's different. Someone being concerned about how they appear maybe to their mate, to their community, is different than someone being denied the opportunity for education or even to leave their house.
Well, you know, I think the talk about education, it's not as if, you know, somebody came and closed down Virginia Tech and said all the women have to go home. We're talking about a country whose infrastructure was destroyed. It's not like they have universities all over the place and they just sent the women home. So many of the teachers were killed fighting as mujahideen. So you're acting as if, once again, you're viewing it through a Western lens. And if things had to get extra tight before they can go back to a more moderate line, then that's the case. And it's not a perfect situation, but I think viewing it, you know, from some superior Western technological viewpoint is not correct.
You're listening to Talk of the Nation from NPR News. Mr. Hashemi, why don't you respond to Nancy?
Thank you very much for your comments, and wa alaikum assalam. It's exactly right, and I have told the American people here that if my only source of information about the Taliban were the Western media, I would hate them too, because the media here is exactly reporting things, exaggerating in spicy stories so that sell advertisements simply.
Exactly.
So in our country, the situation is not as simple or simplistic as the people see it here. The situation there is worse. 95% of our people are uneducated. 95% of our people do not even know if the world is round or flat. So to try to talk to them about votes or that thing is ridiculous. All they care about is their food All they care about is the health of children. It's right. For even in the United States, do still women have equal salaries as men have? No.
No.
Even 75 years ago, did you have the right of women? Did women have the right of voting? No. Everything should be done gradually. Look at about the rights of women in Las Vegas. What about that?
What do you mean?
Women are just sold. Women are just used as objects, just used as for the lust of man.
Well, wait a
For
second.
us, it is very surprising.
I find this wild. I mean, wait a minute. People can go to Las Vegas. This is a free society. We have people who fail. We have people who become drug addicts. People who become prostitutes. We have people who commit suicide. It's a free society.
Exactly. This is your society, and this is for us. It is horrible, but we don't criticize you for that. Maybe there are things which are horrible for you that you see in our country, but that is not horrible for us.
You know what bothers me is a fact is a fact. In your culture or in my culture, if you said to me, Juan, your daughter can't go to school, I would say, Mr. Hashemi, you and I have a big, big problem.
Please, we don't say that they can go to school. And when I'm repeating it again and again, we are not coming from Mars or other planet. We are from the Earth, and we are giving birth by a woman. Our wives are women. Our daughters are women. Our sisters are women. What do you mean?
Well, as I understand it, and again, I'm relying on Western media accounts, you have limited educational opportunities for women. You have limited the ability of a woman to even practice the law, medicine, in terms of using her education. You're shaking your head. You say this is not true.
That is absolutely wrong.
All right. Let's take another call. Let's go to Omar, who's in Trenton, New Jersey. Omar, you're on Talk of the Nation with Lauren Jenkins and Mr. Hashemi.
Thank you for taking my call. And salam alaikum, Mr. Hashemi. I want to make a comment on two things, if you give me a chance, Mr. Wan.
Yes, please be quick.
Okay. The first thing, that the Taliban did a lot of positive things for the country of Afghanistan, which has suffered for 20 years in the wars and was horrible in Afghanistan, was unhuman things going on. Right now, the 90% of Afghanistan is in faith and heaven for the people that live in Afghanistan, but not for the Western countries.
Omar, can you hold on for just a moment, please?
Sure.
We're talking about Afghanistan's struggle to survive winter, war, famine, and poverty. I'm Juan Williams. It's Talk of the Nation from NPR News. It's Talk of the Nation. I'm Juan Williams. Tomorrow, President Bush has told the American Bar Association he won't be needing its help when he's nominating judicial candidates, the ABA's reaction, and the challenges of selecting judges. That's on the next Talk of the Nation at this time tomorrow. Today we're talking about the struggle for survival in Afghanistan, where wars, famine, winter, and international sanctions have put the lives of Afghans at risk. But is the Islamic Taliban government increasing the burden on its people by applying hardline Islamic rules? Our guests are the roving envoy of the Taliban government of Afghanistan, Saeed, Mr. Hashemi. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Mr. Hashemi?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And Lauren Jenkins. I think I got your name right, Lauren.
You got it.
I'm working on it, though. NPR's Foreign Desk Editor. Join the conversation, 800-989-TALK. Our email address is totn@npr.org. Omar, you were saying before the break. Please continue.
I was saying that Afghanistan was thrown to a lot of horrible things in Afghanistan, and the people was disrespecting the women. But right now, the woman is protected and respected, and everybody is loving and caring about the women. But the Western media is making, negative things out of that, which is this is the Islamic rule. But they're not supposed to, expect from Islamic women as a Western woman. We have the rule. And another thing in Afghanistan was the ally of the United States one time. When we destroyed the communism and they leave us alone, and we are killing in each other, brothers, sisters, don't care about us. And one time we was the friend, ally. Osama bin Laden was the ally and friend. But right now he is the number one enemy, and Afghanistan is number two enemy. So I want to make, if you can make a comment on that.
Well, I appreciate it, Omar. Thank you for your call. Mr. Hashemi, here is someone defending the treatment of women in Afghanistan. But what you're hearing from me, I think what you're hearing from Lauren Jenkins, is concern that women are being denied rights. And what you've done is you've come on the show and say, listen, the image that you have in the Western media is a complete distortion. So the reality is that, now you're telling me this, women can go to school, young women can go to school, can get an education, can learn a profession, and can practice that profession and aspire to be anything in Afghanistan. Is that right?
Exactly, that's right. And we have said that if that is limited, it doesn't mean that we don't want to expand that. We don't have enough resources to do that. And we have asked several times the world to help us in that. The United Nations helped us with opening 5 faculties of medical science for women, and that is now going on. So we have said that please help us, but we cannot change the way we educate women. You cannot just ask us that they should wear miniskirts and go together with boys. That's our rule.
Okay. All right, let me take another call. This one from David in Ithaca, New York. David, you're on Talk of the Nation.
Thanks, Juan. I'm glad to have the opportunity, Mr. Hashemi, to express a great pain and sorrow that your government has caused to myself as a Buddhist and to Buddhists all over the world by the destruction of these 2 great, beautiful and wonderful statues. I want to make the point, first of all, that it is not fundamentally a religious issue because all other Islamic nations around the world have expressed disgust and dismay at the policy of your government towards these Buddhist statues. And also, Islam has been in Afghanistan for something like 1,000 years. And up until the last few weeks, no Afghan leader had ever thought it necessary to destroy these wonderful works of art that are part of your nation's history, culture, and the heritage of your children. The problem is that your government has no respect for other people and for the rights of other people to worship freely whatever religion they choose.
Well, David, let's stop there for a second and get a response from Mr. Hashemi.
I really sympathize with you, but you have...
What do you mean you sympathize? When you've destroyed these statues and you're going to go on destroying the religious articles of other religions.
Let me explain whether it was an act of discrimination or not. We have said that in 1997 we said that we will preserve all these statues. So why the people destroyed it now is that a different question. And we have done it not in any kind of discriminations towards any kind of religion. Still, those statues which are worshipped in Afghanistan by the Hindu community are preserved. And they are still going there and praying to that statues, and we have kept that for that. We have not done it based on any kind of...
Statues that you destroyed are holy objects to all Buddhists everywhere in the world.
So let me explain that. So we have said...
How would you feel if...
Wait, let him speak, David.
...destroyed mosques?
David, let him speak. Go ahead, Mr. Hashemi.
Let me explain it to you. I have never said that we have done it towards discrimination to the Buddhists. We respect their religion, and we still respect that. And that decision was taken by the Council of Scholars, approved by the Supreme Court, and could not be broken down by the head of the government. So,
so you're saying the Taliban was not responsible for the destruction of the statues, that it was really the cleric's decision?
The cleric's decision, and we had said that we will save them. But you can't just deny what the scholars said, and the Supreme Court passed that message.
We said you used your army and your military to destroy the statues.
That's right. We have to obey the orders of the Supreme Court. That happened. We said that all the statues that are harmed.
Who controls the Supreme Court? Why is it that in 1,000 years of Islam in Afghanistan, it was never even thought about to destroy these statues?
I'm coming on this. Any statues that are harmless to us, we will not destroy it. And we have said that we will keep this. It happened when the United Nations and some foreign visitors came there and tried to repair these statues, and we told them, please, we don't need the repair of these statues. For us, our future is much important than our past. Please help the children who are dying. 700 children died of malnutrition 1 month ago. It's according to the UNICEF survey. And we told them, please help these children who are dying. And the people were angry after they rejected this. Because if when I called from here, and I was myself confused as to what is happening, because it was a headache for me too. I called them and they told me that if the world does not care, or if the world is destroying the future of our children with economic sanctions, how do they care about our past?
Lauren Jenkins?
Aren't you saying, what you're telling us here is that basically you destroyed these two great statues that represent antiquity in Buddhism out of pique, because the UN wanted to give money to repair them. Why couldn't you just leave them if you didn't want the money? You didn't have to destroy them. I mean, this is just an act of sheer pique on your part to thumb your nose at the world.
Well, when people go on demonstration, even in your streets, they destroy windows, they destroy cars. They shouldn't do it. But I have to say that these are the realities of war. All the problems in Afghanistan are the leftovers of war, and that war was not ignited by us. That war was ignited by the international community. And the problems in Afghanistan are the reflections of the world policies. If you don't slide the image in the mirror, please do not break the mirror. Break your face. So this is our saying, that the situation there is not our creation. That is reflecting the world policies. The world played with us. They fought there. The problems there are the leftovers of war.
Let me ask you a question here. We noted earlier in the show, you're 24 years old. The oldest leader of the Taliban is 40 years old. But the clerics, the religious leaders, I suspect, are much older. Is that right?
That does not mean that they must be old. There are aged people, but this is not a condition that they must be old.
So in fact, then, does it mean that the clerics, being older people, have some seniority and in fact are telling the Taliban what they must do, and that the Taliban, composed of younger people, is reluctant to challenge these older clerics?
Look, I will explain what our government is. We have a head of the government. We have a council of ministers, and this is the executive body. And we have a legislature. We have district councils, we have provincial councils, and we have a main council of people and scholars in Kabul. This is the legislature. And we have a judicial system, that is the Supreme Court and all, which is completely independent. The Supreme Court's decision is independent. So this decision was taken by the legislature, approved by the Supreme Court, and we waited for 2 weeks so that we can somehow find out a way out of this.
All right. Let me take a call from Ted, who's in Los Angeles. Ted, you're on Talk of the Nation. Go right ahead.
Yeah, you just answered my question, and this just points exactly where I thought it was going. You guys are fanatical. You're too young to run the country, and all you have to do is look at all the other totalitarian regimes around, and that's what you got. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for your call, Ted. Some people said you're fanatical. You're too young to run the country. But when you started this discussion with us today, you said really you were a group of students. Group of students who were reacting to what you saw as violence and instability in Afghanistan, and in fact trying to rescue 2 young girls who had been raped.
Who could do better than we did? This is the question. We reunified that country, we disarmed the people, we established peace and security there, we brought the eradication of opium cultivation with narcotics. 75% of the world opium or the narcotics was produced in Afghanistan. We eradicated it. We have not been appreciated for any of these things. Okay, you're telling us that we are young. The old people failed to do anything. Oh, we did it. We did these things. The world has only sent us cruise missiles, sanctions, isolation, and criticism. What do you expect from a country that faces all these problems?
You're listening to Talk of the Nation from NPR News. Let's go to Bill, who's in Chicago. Bill, welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to ask a question. When I think of Afghanistan now, I can't help but think of Cambodia in the 70s. I see the Taliban is going backwards and not forward. What does Mr. Hashemi have to say about that?
Well, hang on a second, Bill, for everyone. Explain why you see an analogy or parallel with Cambodia in the 70s.
Because the country's isolating itself, like just what you said about destroying those statues in the peak, and how everywhere in the world women seem to be getting more rights, and in their country it seems to be going backwards.
All right. Thanks for your call, Bill. By the way, Lauren, would you agree? You know that part of the world so well.
Well, I think that I can see where one could make some parallels. I think there are also great differences between Cambodia under Pol Pot and Afghanistan under the Taliban, although both movements were reactions to war that was brought on them. What I would disagree with Mr. Hashemi is this war was not created by the West, or even by the Russians, the breakdown of Afghanistan began when your own people overthrew the king, and there was an internal civil war that later brought in that the Russians came in to help one faction against others. But the breakdown didn't just start with the Russians coming or the Americans coming later.
Mr. Hashemi?
It's surprising. The Russians had that plan for centuries to invade Afghanistan, and nobody can deny this fact. They wanted the warm water ports, and they invaded Afghanistan. We are very thankful to the United States that helped us to get rid of the Russians, but at least they should not leave us alone with all those problems, the destruction. All the economy was destroyed, the millions of refugees, and all these things. There is a difference of perspectives. I've seen both the societies now. The people here have a Western perspective of Afghanistan, which is completely wrong. You cannot even pronounce our names correctly.
You can blame me, but I don't know that you can blame everyone.
So if you can't do that, that means there's a big difference between the societies. All these things, please don't make assumptions. Ask me questions. We have never said that women should not be educated. We have never said that women shouldn't go to work. We have said that we have our own principles. And these things are not only in Afghanistan. Go to Saudi Arabia. Women do educate, but separately. Women, even there, they cannot drive. What about Iran? Even in Pakistan, if you go there. So it doesn't mean 51% of our population is women. If they want us to change, they can change us in no time.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Saeed Hashemi, roving envoy of the Taliban government of Afghanistan. Thanks again for coming in.